Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome again to the HKA webinar series. This year, we've been working on the year of the plan, kind of starting at the beginning again with knowing your why, building out a budget. And today we're going to talk about KPIs, key performance indicators. I can't continue without a quick prayer out to the people of Ukraine, the families that are suffering, and also the people in Russia who are also under the gun here and displaced from their families. Hopefully, we can figure something out here. But in 2022, planning for a small business is more important than ever. We continue to have issues with throughput, resources, supply chain management. I was talking to someone earlier said they normally ship within 1 to 2 years, 1 to 2 days, but today, who knows? We really don't know. So one of the things that we want to be aware of is when it comes down to preparing your small business for the impact of anything that's going on, understanding your costs, understanding the way the relationships, your financials work is critical to making sure that you hit your performance goals. Now, the one things that I want you to talk about here is key KPIs or key performance indicators are one of the best ways to truly get to know your business. So meet the team. This is our team, myself, Bill Kruse, Jordan Coolingle, and Nick White. Catherine's on the phone. Catherine, say hi. She's going to make sure that if you have questions, you get those questions answered very timely, very quickly. She's going to make sure that if you have needs for the handouts, that the handouts will be with you, and that also if you want something, this program is being recorded, and so she'll make sure that the recording also gets posted. So with that, go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, if you do have a question, feel free to send me a text, or I'm used to saying send me a text, send me a chat. If you have my phone number, feel free to text me too. But you can send me a chat or use the question and answer function at the bottom of the screen. Also, the handouts will be sent out after the webinar. If you have any questions afterwards or would like to set up an appointment to talk with someone, please don't hesitate to contact us.
Awesome. All right, so let's get started. So we talked about the team. Let's get into it. So what I hope this does is give you some indication of what KPIs are and the very valuable impact that KPIs can have on any small business. I'm also hoping that what you take away from it is that HK is ready to help you. KPIs are still, I wouldn't call them unknown in the industry, but they're still one of the lagging things that hasn't caught up to small businesses. There's not a great technology fix for defining KPIs. Oftentimes we have to do several things to make them work, but they are so critical and they will definitely help you. So let's talk a little bit about it. First of all, Kpi types. There are 2 types of KPIs. There's the financial KPIs, okay? Measurement through the financial statements and its input system. So QuickBooks Online or Xero. Now, why do I not have QuickBooks Desktop on here? I'm expecting that as we continue to move into this year and future years, things like desktop platforms will go away because they don't interface well with transparency, with quick reporting and that kind of thing. They tend to not connect as well as the online program of QuickBooks. And they also make it more difficult for other people to connect to the system. It also complicates, just in general, your overall security system for making sure that the secure portals that you use to communicate with your business, it complicates that as well. So I'm expecting QBO becomes the name of the future, as well as Xero, which was built from the ground up for an internet age, an electronic computing age. So it's already ready to bolt on to several different things we'll talk about here. So financial measurements, financial systems, QBO, Xero, bank feeds, credit card feeds. We also have subsidiary letters for point of sale, which is down in your non-financial. We can get financial and non-financial. You'll have inventory now that will bolt onto these so I can manage inventory, project management systems, which we think are one of the critical things. So if you're in a small business right now and you do run your business by projects, and many of us do, there's some terrific project management tools out there, one of them namely Simpro. And what those do is allow vendors to send you your invoices into the Simpro, which then communicates directly with QuickBooks Online. No more double counting here. Oh, I got an invoice here. I have to put it in the tracking system, and then I have to go over and put it in the accounting system. No, not anymore. Okay. And that's the kind of thing that we want to continue to move forward with. So financial measures, non-financial measures. Now, these are more difficult. We find, especially even today, that these take some time to figure out how we get that information into our system so we can get our hands on it. POS systems are increasingly connecting quickly to our accounting management systems. Website systems are increasingly connecting to our electronic accounting platforms to give us these reports. Phone systems, okay, there's a lot of phone systems out there, especially if I'm managing some sort of a data center or a call center within the business, say taking online orders or just communicating with clients, that kind of stuff. Those systems are also becoming increasingly connected or connectable. Some of my favorites, those sales, those CRM systems, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but getting data from them for the non-financial piece, which will help us drive those KPIs, is becoming increasingly easy. So when we think about it, what it does is, in order to go with KPIs, we understand and identify our business, our cycle, the business flows. What are our execution systems, okay? So we're breaking down the business into its components, different elements of it. A lot of times what you're going to find, especially when you come here, financial, non-financial, and you heard me talk about a lot of different systems coming together, right? We call that blueprinting, where we're going to go in and connect our financial and our non-financial systems so that we can create an impact or trend reporting and enable quick reaction reports to management so they can make decisions based on options they see quickly, not have to wait month and a half, 2 months until financial statements come to them. I take that offline just to real quick. If you're interested in some help with blueprinting and getting it together, and then making your financial statements less stale, we'll say, please give us a call. Nick White, who you saw earlier, this is one of the things Nick does a fabulous job with, is connecting the pieces of our small business world so that we can get financial statements, not by the 10th day of the next month, but by the 10th or 15th day of the month after. We want to get this, we want to take some staleness out of those things. So if you're interested in that, please give us a call. So once again, non-financial measurements, my favorite, just have to tell you, they tend to be more, I think they tend to be more impactful or telling, so to speak, in the business. And you hear this all the time in the news, leading indicators, right? You hear that news, leading indicators tell us what. So what are those indicators? Historically, most of those indicators, when it comes to the newsreel, is some financial measurements that are being reported, right, through the federal government or through different mechanisms. Here, my leading indicator may be, I'm not getting any clicks this month. My website is dead. Okay, that's a leading indicator. That's going to tell me something, especially about that. So KPI types, financial, non-financial. It's very important to identify them, very important to separate them and figure out which one we should go after first. Next thing, best practices. I have to tell you, a lot of times we miss the best practices. So I want to hit those up front. When it comes to KPIs, like anything else we do, there's some best practices. So a KPI must be objective, measurable, and reportable. If I have to create 5 reports and then decide what the KPI was, that's not objective, it's not really measurable, and it certainly isn't reportable. It takes too much time. So objective, measurable, reportable. The KISS principle comes in. Let's keep it simple. Remember, we want to baby step those. Remember our last week's conversation about really setting goals for the business. Don't bite off too much here, folks. Let's make sure we get something. We will be successful by starting. We'll continue it by succeeding. And as we succeed, then we can build more things into our approach, okay? So keep them simple. They have to be quick and easy to read. That's that transparency you keep hearing me talk about, right? They have to be comparable to the budget. So they have to mean something. It can't be just a number. This KPI has a relevant something to something, a direct impact. And finally, it can't take too long to create this. If it takes me 2 or 3 days to create the report, you're not going to use it. My small business men and women need this data on the fly so they can make decisions, look at options, and weigh when we hit that Y in the road or even the 4-way, which direction am I going? So, okay, those are the KPI best practices. If you take anything away, copy this off and make sure you put it somewhere. You could apply this to almost everything in business. All right, setting targets. Once again, don't bite off too much. Now, here's where we're going to look back to the other things. Remember the building blocks of small business, right? We've already set our goals. Now, what are we really after? Now, last week, one of the goals was our brand. We want to make sure our brand is there. So we want to look at those achievement factors. What are our different levels of execution, and what are our resource needs able to enable us to achieve the goal of setting some KPIs and getting these targets. So don't forget impact on ultimate goals. So in the context, remember, we talked about budgeting last week. We talked about really precision budgeting almost, where we're looking for the top things we want to impact. What are the 2 or 3 things that are most directly impacting our ability to be successful? Normally 2 or 3 sources of revenue, 2 or 3 expense. Remember also a big deal on oftentimes if we're not watching expense and we're just running really hard, we may hit our revenue goal and miss our net income goal. So we want to look at this stuff. So understanding a KPI is very critical. Remember that we often confuse results with key KPIs, key performance indicators. I'm going to tell you, I'm the first one to do that. Well, so what's a KPI? Sales growth. No, that's the result of something else that happened. So I want to keep that in our mind, keep that pressure in your mind. The last thing, which probably ought to be the first thing, is we're going to validate these items with the team. They have to have ownership of them. They have to believe in them themselves. And a lot of times we'll get a lot of information from the team when we get that feedback. So this is setting targets. We've talked already about the first one, the best practices, setting targets. What's next? How to identify KPIs. Holy mackerel. Now that's what your handout is. I've given you some very generic for sales and marketing and expenses, okay? I've given you a whole bunch of them that you can look at and see, okay, if I'm trying to get to sales, and I've got an example in here, so bear with me, but it's going to help me identify what is a KPI when it comes to these types of things. So once again, they begin with budgeting, and they're the budget that's been developed for the entire year, maybe even to strategic timeframes, because the beauty of a KPI is once we identify the KPI, I can say, well, I want to do this in this period. Well, how do I accomplish it? Well, I watch my KPIs, and the KPI will drive that strategic number. So timeframes are good. Don't forget to prioritize these goals. Strategic resource allocation. You don't have all the money and you don't have all the time in the world. Strategic resource allocation. And one of the things you want to look at is sometimes you'll find one KPI may cancel another KPI out, right? So if I'm trying to grow revenue, then I need maybe sales contacts or sales or contracts or whatever there are. And then on the other side, I'm trying to limit my inventory costs. Well, I may have to build some inventory in order to get the sales, right? Because there's a gestation period. So make sure that we're identifying those things too. Now, here is when we're going to start identifying what teams own what, okay? So this is identifying KPIs. Now this, I'm just going to tell you, identifying KPIs is not an easy thing, okay? It's not something, I'm just going to tell you, this is a great time to give HKA a call right here. All right, Bill, I'm ready to identify some KPIs. Okay, let's look at the budget. We'll take a look at the budget. We'll figure out what are the 2 or 3 strategic things. Now let's go create KPIs and then some sort of reporting metric so that we know where those KPIs are. Okay, so this is a great slide to get that done. I think I skipped a couple of slides. Catherine, while I'm trying to figure out where the slides are, any questions yet? Not yet.
Sorry,
okay.
Bill. Yeah, we don't have any questions just yet.
Okay, all right, so here's a test case. This is just something that I want to start with. And remember, objectable, measurable, reportable, all those things, okay? And you're gonna hear right now my fun thing, right? Non-financial. So let's talk, most of us are trying to do something with revenue. We're either trying to drive revenue in a segment of our business or in general in the business, depending on where it is. So when we look at this, the first thing I want you to do to think about when we talk about sales KPIs is, believe it or not, we kind of need to work in reverse order, okay? What's the budget? Let's start with the budget. Well, the budget is to raise sales in this segment of the business by 30%. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, I'm making this up. It's my test case. So that means that I want to raise sales by $300,000. Okay, so that is the budgeted goal. Haven't got a KPI yet. So how am I going to get there? Well, here's what I know. I know that the value of each contract is about $15,000. Okay. Well, then I know that in order to hit my $300,000 revenue raise, I need to close 20 contracts, averaging $15,000. Okay, that gets me my $300,000. Now, well, how do I close 20 contracts? Well, then I say, well, the industry standards may come in depending on the segment or the business that you're in, but a lot of times the close on new market penetration is somewhere around the 10%. That's actually quite good. Now, don't confuse that with open rates on the internet. Okay, don't confuse that with open rates on the internet. Okay, okay. So now you have to do what? You have to figure out how many clients this would be a need for, so I can figure out how many clients I have to call. Now, if my close rate is 10%, we already figured out that I have to close 20 contracts. That means the inverse of it is I have to have 200 contracts or 200 contacts. Okay, so if I don't have 200 people to call, well, that changes everything a little bit, doesn't it? But right in there, what did we do? We identified our KPIs, didn't we? We know what our KPIs, the primary KPI is I have to contact 200 clients. I have to close 20 of those 200. So along the way, if I have a KPI saying that this month, we're trying to do this over 12 months. If the goal is to, and I shoot over the goal and I say, well, I'm going to contact 20 prospects to do this every month for 12 months. Now, remember that in the 11th and 12th month, if I contract 20, right, in those 2 months, what's happened? Well, they may not close until the next period. So I may miss my number. And that's therefore we when I put down the we could do more piece, there's a gestation period in there. So we can get really complicated in here, but let's go back to our KISS principle. All right. So if I set my KPI that I'm going to make 20 contacts a month, and the 10% would say that of those 20, hopefully I get 2. Okay, well, let's say the first month I'm running at a 50% close, and second month I run at a 50% close again. Whoa, just a second. What happens next? It's their next drivers, right? Gauge the client interest, check our pricing, check our marketing, and relearn. What did we learn? We may be underpricing this thing. That's not a bad thing, but it is something for us to learn as we go. So this isn't just about hitting your goal. It's about learning your business. And that's the beauty of a key performance indicator. We will know before the financial results hit whether or not we're there. Why? Because we're tracking contacts, which then leads us to tracking contracts. So that key performance indicator is objective, it's measurable, it's reportable, and it's truly a leading indicator because the results aren't settling into my financial system yet, but I already know I'm way ahead of the, now should I back off? No, go back to the next one. Message the client, relearn, make sure marketing is learning from this as well so that we can adjust if we need to. Something like that's quite rare. More often is I do my 20 and I close 1. Well, that's 5%. That's half as good as it is. So I may have to up next month, right? But we got to learn that as we go. How many months before I change my methodology? Probably a couple. So if I close 5% for 2 months in a row, well, I've learned something. Either I'm missing the clients, I didn't stratify them well, or I've overpriced the product. Now, 40 phone calls in 2 months, someone should be telling us something, right? Who are they telling? They're telling inventory, they're telling management, and of course, we're telling marketing. What are we learning from this? I'm talking to John. I thought he'd be perfect for this. He's not. This is why. See, the learning process is right there. KPIs drove that. Okay, so now we're learning as we go, but we're also measuring these KPIs. And you can see how, think about it, when it comes to contracts in general, it takes some time. If I get somebody ink an LOI or a purchase order, actually getting the contract and the collection of the revenue, that may be 45 days down the road. That's that gestation period we talked about. So we have to think through this. But that's a terrific example of a sales-oriented KPI. Remember, we backed into it. We said, I looked at my good budget and I said, I want my revenue to be up, okay? And that up was $300,000. And I knew that the average close was $15,000 per contract. That means I need 20 contracts to hit my bogey. Well, if I only could close 10% of the people I contact, that means I need to contact 200 people to hit that sales goal. Now remember, sales is the result. The key KPI is the leading indicator that's showing us the direction of the business before we even get it on a financial statement. That's the beauty of non-financial KPIs. They're quick, they are objective, measurable, and reportable, and I can get them off of systems quickly. Once again, going back to HKA wants to help you with this. A lot of times what we find is such valuable data sitting in phone systems or POS systems, quite frankly. But also there's so many good CRM systems out there like Salesforce, which is not going to just track the number of contacts, but how many phone calls did we have in general. Salesforce is a great tool. There are some other tools though. Don't get hung up on Salesforce, because I will tell you from personal experience, Salesforce is not the easiest thing to learn. Okay, but it is one of those wonderful tools that blueprinters like Nick could go figure out. Let's pull that information out so we can run the reports so that management can see options for them to make choices. That's the key. All right, so that's our test revenue case. Check the notes real quick. Nothing else there. Okay, so that's our test revenue case. What's the next one? Well, how about an expense case? Because remember, we can hit our sales goal and miss our net income goal. Those are not fun, because you've worked so hard to get those sales. If you miss your net income goal, it's almost like letting the air out of a tire. So once again, objective, measurable, reportable. Maybe we have a cost of goods sold goal. Now I should have mentioned this up above. So when we come to this, see if I can go up. So the measurement in a sales goal is going to be using financial and non-financial tools, financial and non-financial data. Okay. So I focus mainly on the non-financial piece, right? Which was what? Contacts, okay, and contracts, okay. But what else am I going to need? From my revenue, from my financial measurement system, I'll know the average size or prospective profitability of that contract, okay. So that's the financial size of it, because buried in that KPI is not just that I need 15,000, but oh, by the way, if my gross profit coming off of that is not 15,000, it's 10 or 12 or 13,000. Once again, not meeting that bottom line goal. So inventory management needs this information as well. Okay, so that's the financial side. So now let's go back to that expense side. Once again, measurement is financial and non-financial. Okay, now what are these things? Okay, and I'm oversimplifying this, but when we look at a financial system like this or an expense system like this, here's the widget I need to sell. In this case, I need to sell 20 widgets, and I need a gross profit of $15,000 on those 20 widgets, and I'm going to get where I wanted to be with my budget. Okay, that's the key. And in this example, it's $15,000 per widget. That gets me gross revenue of $300,000. I have other internal goals. Gross profit should be this, which drives down into net income. So now I'm on the cost of goods sold side. So remember, go back to that first step, one of those earlier conversations, identify 3 revenue and 3 direct expense, top 3, okay? Because this is my direct expense. And here we go, and we say, in order to hit our budget, my gross profit margin on all sales must be 35%. Once again, okay, so now let's back into it. I'll get from financial data in the sales side what my average contract rate is. And then I'll also get financial data on the expense side, what the average cost of goods sold margin is on those. Here's the learning period, right? If it's not 35%, we're missing something. Okay, but in order to achieve either one of those goals, I have to have what? I have to have inventory. Today, more than ever, inventory is the problem, okay? I can sell it, but I can't get it in for 6 months. Something like that. So here we want to be looking at how many units do I have on hand? And some people look at me going, Bill, I cannot set my production system down into I have this many units of widgets because I have 6 inputs for the one widget. You're right. I mean, that can be more complex. We're going to go choose something else there. Okay. But that's the key. Understand your business, understand the markup. Give us a call. Let us help you figure out how to get this cost of goods sold metric. Revenue, expense. Make sure I can hit my revenue target, but can I hit my net income target? Because the expense is going to drive that thing. So that's how we do it. All right. So we're using measurement, financial and non-financial. What's my non-financial? Trying to figure out how much input things I have. Well, I have this many tons of potash on hand, let's say. The average potash farm needs 2 tons per acre, and I normally cover 3,000 acres a year. Okay, that's a bunch. I need this much. Well, inventory shipping is going to be down here. So this is how it kind of comes in over the month. So I need how many loads? There's your KPI. How many loads? How many loads did I get? What was the gross profit on the load, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how we work into, oftentimes backwards, we reverse engineer it to figure out what our KPI is. And remember the KPI, objective, measurable, reportable, the key driver. It's not the result. It's the thing that if I do it, I'll see the financial results later. So those are our test cases. We're just about out of time. Catherine, any questions right now?
We don't have any questions, and you are right, it is 12:26. I didn't know if you were planning to run through the handouts though really fast that we'll send out after the webinar.
Let's see, let me see if I can't do that real quick then, Catherine. I'm actually not getting anything to work. So it's not opening up. So it may be opening up somewhere else.
Do you want me to share? Do you want me
sure,
to
go
share
ahead. I'll stop sharing and you can share. Go right ahead.
Give me 1 second. I think my question is, like as someone looking at this, when we get the handouts, does this mean that we need to answer every single question on the handout?
And the answer is no. I mean, that's one of the key things is that KISS principle at the beginning. Let's keep this thing pretty simple. So each one of these, if we're looking right here at the customer service KPIs, these are all different KPI measurements. So if you just stick on that first page, inbound, we're working with a client right now we're extracting call data. So we can see what's our inbound call rate, what's the average. One of the big ones is what's the missed call rate, what's the return call rate. What's the average stay on the line? It's helping us understand the ability of our, in this case, dispatch technicians to get calls, answer calls, get them turned around and turn them into rides, okay, in this case. So these are all KPIs. So you don't take all of them together. You just pick out which one of these works. So think of branding, right? Think of branding. Go to my phone system and I have number of complaint calls, okay? Well, obviously, if I want my brand to go the right direction, I kind of need to drive that down. Well, okay, let's work on that. How are we going to do that? That could be product quality or anything, but to measure whether our product is increasing quality, number of complaints is going to be a big one. So Catherine, scroll on down to the next page. So these are finance. Go ahead, sir.
So
go
just
ahead.
Really fast, since there are quite a few questions here. What if, let's say we're a new business owner, kind of who's never established KPIs before, what's your recommendation for how to narrow in? I know you talked a little bit about this, but now that we're actually looking at this fairly extensive list, do we choose 10? Do we choose 5? Do we throw a dart at the board? Like, what do we do?
One or two. So each one of these are the key performance indicator, the key KPI, or the key performance indicator of sales, of finance, of marketing. So let's just let's keep it simple, right? So I want to grow. I look at my budget. We did that last time. This is why a budget is so important. I look at my budget and I look at the things that are important in it. And I say, if I do that piece of my budget, all is good in my life. All right, well then let's concentrate on that thing. Now we have the one thing, and it happens to be sales in some division or some part of my business. So I want to get sales in this one thing, okay? How am I going to drive sales? Well, it depends on the type of sale. Now we're going to choose one KPI, the most important one, which will make sure that we hit that budget. Maybe it's the first one, actual calls. I mean, that's coming off my phone system. And I can pull that data in there and see if calls are up. I wanted calls. I had to double my number of calls. I'm up 75%. I'm not quite up 100%, but I need to get there. That's the only KPI I'm going to work on. It's the only one I'm identifying. And people will say, wow, but what about all the others? No. Remember, by starting, we've accomplished a lot. But to continue, we must be successful. And if I overwhelm my team or my system or my blueprint, quite frankly, with too many of these things, then we won't continue. And the key here is to start and continue, and then we
I
can
do have
refine.
one last question for
Sure.
you. And again, like I think that you reinforced this throughout the webinar, but how does the why matter? Like, why did we start? What's the why? Like, how does it interface so directly with KPIs?
That's a great question. So the why, once again, the why is, what am I doing this for? What's my higher calling? Why is it that when I come home at night, I love what I do? Because I'm enforcing my why every day. In order to do the why, I have to be successful. And so we start with the why. The why tells me what I'm focused on in life and what keeps me centered and happy. And from there, I transition that why into the business as a whole, so I can determine the goals of the business. What are the issues within the business processes or whatever that are not allowing that why to be hit out of the park 5 days a week, 7 days, whatever it is. Okay. So then from there, we did what? We looked at those goals, the goals. And last week it were branding, customer loyalty, and longevity of our team. Those were last week's goals. All right. So then I said, okay, based on those goals, how do those goals impact my budget? And once I have my budget, now it's not about the why directly, it's all indirectly. Now, how do I achieve my budget? Because if I focused on these 3 goals, remember last week it was branding, customer loyalty, and longevity of my team. And we determined last week that means that we have to increase our branding and marketing budget. We have to look at our salaries and bonuses plan. See, so now the budget is now impacted because why? Why do we focus on those? Because the why told us those were critical things for me to achieve my why. Now I'm down in the KPI, and the KPI isn't about measurement as for measurement of itself. It's about allowing the business owner to know where they are before they actually get the piece of paper that says where they are. And that's what KPIs are. And that's kind of a hand in glove thing here about setting budgets. And then once I have the budget, what good is it if I'm not setting it up in such a way and then focusing team ownership in such a way to achieve the budget? Now, once I do that, we'll talk about it next week, monitoring. So KPIs are the building blocks of the things necessary to become a successful business. So I need to get that slide back up. All right, so key takeaways. Catherine, any other questions? Those are great questions. Any other questions on the elements? And remember, the list is not questions you should ask yourself. That list are KPIs, key performance indicators associated with the different elements, sales, marketing. And I didn't put them all out there. There's a terrific website, kpi.org, you can go to. I'm a member of that website. So you're welcome to go there and just take a look at the stuff on there. It's going to give you a lot more information on it as well. But of course, I'd love it if you just gave us a call. We'd love to talk to you about them. And that's kind of the key takeaways, is that HK can help you find and understand your KPIs. And oftentimes what comes from that is, I don't have the right blueprint of the system for me to even start. Okay, well, let's get started. Let's do a blueprint. Let's figure out how we pull from the things you've already invested in, pull from those the data you need to make decisions based on options that are now presenting yourself. So that's a key takeaway. Don't bite off too much. That's going to be a recurring thing. Engage the team. Always engage your team. Do not make decisions out here, small business men and women, in the vacuum. Let's get the team involved, because you're going to get insight from there that will impact your KPIs. Don't forget the relearn. All right, so I'm running ahead of schedule. Why? I've underpriced the market. Okay, that's not a good place to be, right? Relearn and always get it back to marketing, especially if we're getting ourselves out in front of ourselves and we're beating our goals. There's probably some really happy clients out there and my marketing team can go get a hold of those happy clients and get some good traction there from our website. So those are key takeaways for today. KPIs, one of my favorite thought processes, one of the favorite things when small business men and women implement KPIs, they become successful. That's a guarantee. You can take that to the bank. Next week, we're going to talk about dashboard monitoring, just monitoring in general kind of thing. Setting up a dashboard. QBO and Xero both have decent dashboards. A lot of your CRM systems will have a different kind of dashboard, but still a dashboard. What's a dashboard? Quick reporting. Okay, all of them need some customization, but that's next week. And then we'll end with succession planning. Catherine, any final questions?
No final questions, but anyone who registered for the webinar today will get a copy of the slides and also the handouts just after this.
Terrific, terrific. Once again, I want to thank everybody for taking time for us. It's a busy time of year. There's a lot of people going on spring break, and we got a lot of stuff going on in the economy and in the world. Stay focused. Some of these things love to help you with, just because if you're thinking about the overwhelming sense of the things going on in the environment and in the world around you, you let us help you set up some KPIs. It's going to take a lot of pressure off of you. And in doing so, it frees you up to realize the goals, both personal and business goals, so that you're going to free up that time to do the things that make a difference in life. I want to thank everybody once again. Catherine, last words.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye now.